They fired me effective immediately. The new female VIP said, barely looking up from her designer portfolio, hand over the logistics system, all of it. I smiled calmly. I'm afraid I cannot. It's not yours to own. When I hit that kill switch at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon, 847 trucks across the Memphis Industrial Corridor stopped receiving route data. Traffic lights froze mid-cycle. Loading dock assignments went dark. 4 years and 8 months of perfect logistics coordination died in the span of 3 seconds. And I watched it all happen from a vinyl booth at Mickey's Diner, sipping black coffee while Amanda Pierce's empire crumbled in real time on my laptop screen. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm 48 years old and I've been running independent transportation systems consulting for 23 years. Started right after I got out of the Army, where I spent 6 years managing logistics for supply convoys in some pretty unfriendly places. Learned real quick that when your routing system fails, people don't just miss deadlines, they die. I live in a decent ranch house about 20 minutes outside Memphis, Tennessee. Got a workshop in the garage where I build custom hardware interfaces. No fancy website. No LinkedIn posts about synergistic solutions. My clients find me when their distribution networks are falling apart and someone's job is hanging by a thread. That's how I ended up working with Apex Freight Solutions 4 years and 8 months ago. Bobby Martinez, their operations chief back then, called me on a Thursday morning. His voice had that edge you hear when a man's looking at his pension evaporating. Marcus, we just failed our 4th DOT compliance audit in 2 years. State Transportation Authority is talking about pulling our interstate permits. I need someone who understands how this stuff actually works, not some consultant who learned logistics from a textbook. Bobby was old school. Came up through the ranks loading trucks before computers ran everything. He understood that behind every dashboard and fancy interface, there's actual machinery that has to function in the real world. When I walked into their facility that first day, the chaos was obvious. Trucks lined up at loading bays with no coordination. Drivers sitting idle while dispatchers made phone calls trying to figure out who was supposed to go where. Traffic backing up at the main entrance because their signal timing was stuck in some default pattern from 1998. We've got 3 different software systems that don't talk to each other, Bobby explained, walking me through the warehouse. Dispatch uses one program, the loading crews use another, and traffic control is basically manual. Every shift change, we lose 2 hours just trying to sync everyone up. I spent the next 18 months building them a real system. Not some off-the-shelf package that kind of works if you bend your operation to fit it. Custom routing algorithms that learn the specific timing patterns of Memphis freight traffic. Signal synchronization that actually communicated with city infrastructure. GPS integration that tracked every vehicle in real time and adjusted schedules dynamically. 120,000 lines of code. Every algorithm, every database structure, every hardware interface built from scratch and tested until it ran flawlessly. The results were immediate. 0 missed delivery windows. No more dock congestion. Trucks flowing through the corridor like a well-oiled machine. State auditors came through twice after implementation and couldn't find a single compliance issue. Bobby would send me emails with actual substance, not corporate thank you notes, but detailed reports on efficiency improvements and cost savings. He understood what he was paying for and, more importantly, what he was getting. The contract was crystal clear. They leased operational access to my system. I retained full ownership of all code, algorithms, and infrastructure. Bobby signed it without hesitation because he understood the difference between using something and owning it. For over 4 years, everything ran perfectly. Monthly payments arrived on time. The system performed exactly as designed. Bobby would call occasionally with questions about optimization or expansion possibilities, always respectful of the boundaries we'd established. Then Bobby retired. Amanda Pierce arrived 3 weeks later with her MBA from Northwestern and her leather portfolio that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. Mid-30s, designer everything, and the kind of confident smile people wear when they think they've just inherited the keys to the kingdom. Her first email wasn't a greeting or an introduction. Subject line, Vendor Expense Optimization Review. The message was pure corporate speak about recurring expenditure analysis and third-party dependency evaluation. My invoice hadn't changed in over 4 years. Same amount, same schedule, same scope of work. But Amanda saw a line item on a budget sheet and immediately assumed there was waste to be cut. I replied politely, attaching the original contract and a brief summary of system performance metrics. Professional courtesy, nothing more. Her response came back within 2 hours. Need to schedule a comprehensive review of all external service agreements. Please prepare documentation for internal assessment of operational frameworks. Operational frameworks. That phrase told me everything I needed to know about Amanda Pierce. She was the kind of executive who thought complex technical infrastructure could be understood by reading bullet points on a PowerPoint slide. I started preparing, not documentation for her assessment, but the tools I'd need when this conversation went exactly where I knew it was heading. 3 days later, the email I'd been expecting arrived. Subject line: Software Package Requirements. Amanda requested a complete copy of the system for internal evaluation and potential transition planning. That's when I knew for certain she didn't want to review our service agreement. She wanted to steal my system. I drafted a response that was technically accurate and completely unhelpful. Happy to provide everything included under your current lease agreement. Then I opened my laptop, navigated to the administrative console that controlled every aspect of their operation, and started building Amanda Pierce's education in the difference between access and ownership. The lesson was about to begin. The next morning brought another email from Amanda. Subject line: Contract Clarification Request. She wanted to know whether the operational logic framework belonged to Apex Freight Solutions. Operational logic framework. That's what she called 4 years and 8 months of custom-built routing algorithms, traffic synchronization protocols, and real-time optimization engines like it was some kind of corporate asset she could inventory and transfer between departments. I screenshot the relevant contract clause and sent it back to her. Bold text: impossible to misinterpret. All system logic, design, architecture, and source code remains the sole property of Marcus Thompson. Licensed for operational use only. No resale, no replication, no derivative works. Bobby had understood that clause perfectly when he signed it. You don't buy a custom logistics system like you're purchasing office furniture. You license access to infrastructure that took years to develop and requires ongoing maintenance from the person who built it. 2 hours later, Amanda's response landed in my inbox. We will be transitioning to internal infrastructure solutions effective immediately. Thank you for your service. That was it. No discussion, no transition planning, no acknowledgement that she was about to disconnect the central nervous system of their entire operation. Just corporate speak for "you're fired and we're keeping your stuff." I leaned back in my desk chair and looked out the window at my workshop. Inside that converted garage bay sat the physical control panel I'd built specifically for the Apex system. Custom hardware interface with dedicated switches for every major subsystem. Traffic control, dock assignment, route optimization, GPS tracking, all of it flowing through circuits I'd soldered by hand. Amanda Pierce had no idea that control panel existed. She thought the system was just software running on their computers. She was about to learn the difference between a user interface and actual infrastructure. 4 days after her termination email, a calendar invite appeared. Service transition discussion. Thursday 2 p.m. Central. No agenda, no context, just a meeting title that suggested she expected this to be a simple handoff conversation. I joined the video call 5 minutes early. Clean button-down shirt, background showing my home office with my engineering license and Army combination certificates visible on the wall. Professional appearance, nothing flashy. Amanda logged in 3 minutes late, settling into her chair with that satisfied expression executives get when they think they've solved a complex problem with simple cost-cutting. A woman from procurement joined next, Michelle Roberts according to her screen name. Then a younger woman who looked barely out of college, Jenny Pierce, probably Amanda's niece based on the last name and the way she deferred to every comment. Bobby Martinez was nowhere to be seen. Not surprising. He'd probably advised against this entire approach, and Amanda had decided his old-school perspective wasn't relevant to modern business practices. "Marcus, thanks for joining us," Amanda began, her tone suggesting this was just a routine administrative task. "We've made the decision to bring infrastructure management in-house. Appreciate all your work up to this point, but we're ready to take control of operations internally." Take control, as if clicking through a user interface was the same thing as operating the underlying system. I kept my expression neutral. "You're ending the lease agreement. Is that correct?" "Correct." Amanda leaned back in her chair like she expected congratulations for her decisive leadership. "We'll need complete handover of all code, system diagrams, and back-end credentials. Standard transition process." Michelle Roberts nodded approvingly. Jenny Pierce typed notes into what was probably a compliance checklist. They had this choreographed like a routine vendor termination. I didn't move. "You're not licensed to access the core infrastructure. Your agreement covers operational use of the system outputs. You never purchased ownership rights." Amanda's confident smile flickered for just a moment. "We paid for development of this system. Marcus, that makes it our intellectual property. This is standard business practice." I leaned forward slightly. "You paid for access to a functioning logistics network. You never bought the underlying technology. That distinction is clearly outlined in Section 4 of your contract." She glanced away from the camera, probably pulling up the contract on another screen. I waited while she scanned through language that Bobby Martinez had reviewed carefully with their legal team 4 years ago. "Look," she said, attempting to regain control of the conversation. "We understand there might be some technical complexities here, but we're prepared to handle operations internally going forward. Just send us whatever files you have so we can maintain continuity." "I'll provide everything you're legally entitled to receive," I replied. Nothing more. The silence stretched across the video call. Michelle Roberts looked uncomfortable. Jenny Pierce stopped typing. Amanda's jaw tightened as she realized this wasn't going to be the simple asset transfer she'd planned. "That'll be fine," she said finally, trying to end the call quickly. "We'll expect delivery by end of business tomorrow." I didn't respond immediately, just sat there looking directly into the camera while she fumbled with her mouse, clearly wanting to disconnect before I could complicate her timeline further. The screen went black and I closed my laptop. Amanda Pierce thought she understood technology because she could navigate software interfaces and read quarterly reports about system performance. She had no comprehension of the physical infrastructure, the custom hardware, the dedicated communication protocols, or the specialized knowledge required to keep it all functioning. She was about to get an education. I walked out to my workshop and powered up the control panel. Every indicator light showed green. Traffic nodes synchronized. Route calculations updating in real time. Dock assignments flowing smoothly through the network. The Memphis freight corridor running exactly as I designed it to run. Then I started building Amanda's transition package. Professional-looking documentation with clean diagrams and impressive technical terminology. User interface screenshots showing dashboard layouts and data visualization panels. Everything polished and official-looking and completely useless without access to the underlying control systems. I spent the rest of the afternoon creating the kind of deliverable Amanda expected to receive. Visual materials that would make her think she'd gotten exactly what she needed to run the operation independently. Interface mock-ups with animated displays. System diagrams that showed the logical flow of operations. All of it disconnected from the actual infrastructure. By 6 p.m. I had a professional-look package ready for delivery. I attached it to an email with a single line of explanation. System interface documentation provided per contract termination. No back-end access included. I hit send and watched the message disappear into corporate email systems where Amanda Pierce would soon discover the difference between owning a steering wheel and owning the engine. Then I walked back out to my workshop, sat down at the control panel, and placed my hand on the master power switch. The real lesson was about to begin. The next morning, I drove to Mickey's Diner like it was any other Tuesday. Ordered my usual black coffee, no cream, no sugar, and settled into the corner booth where I could see the parking lot through the window. The waitress, Nicole, had been serving me the same order for 3 years. She nodded, poured the coffee, and left me alone with my laptop. I opened the administrative console and brought up the main dashboard. Every indicator showed green. Traffic flowing smoothly through 47 synchronized intersections. 847 trucks receiving real-time route updates. Loading dock assignments cycling efficiently through 23 warehouse facilities. Everything Amanda Pierce thought she now controlled was actually flowing through the custom hardware sitting in my workshop 20 minutes away. At 2:45 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from Amanda. "Having trouble accessing route management system. Can you provide login credentials?" I stared at the message for about 10 seconds, then deleted it without responding. At 2:47 p.m., I toggled the master relay switch. The map on my screen froze instantly. Every green indicator went gray. Real-time data feeds dropped to 0. Signal synchronization stopped mid-cycle. The entire Memphis freight network just stopped talking. I took a slow sip of coffee and watched 4 years and 8 months of perfect logistics coordination die in complete silence. The system didn't crash or throw error messages. I designed it to fail gracefully. No alarms, no warning lights, no dramatic shutdown sequences, just clean disconnection from all operational control. If someone tried to restart the user interface, it would load perfectly and display the last cache data, creating the illusion that everything was still working. But underneath, nothing was actually communicating with anything else. For the first 8 minutes, nothing appeared wrong to casual observation. The interface dashboard still showed green status indicators. Dispatchers looking at their screens would see normal traffic patterns and dock assignments. Drivers already en route would continue following their last received instructions, but no new data was flowing anywhere. I pulled up the live camera feeds from major intersections. At 2:55 p.m., I watched a delivery truck sit at a red light that should have changed to green 30 seconds earlier. The signal timing protocol was frozen, unable to adjust for real-time traffic conditions. At 3:02 p.m., 2 trucks arrived simultaneously at the same loading dock. According to their onboard systems, both had valid assignments for Bay 7 at the Western Distribution Center. The dock assignment algorithm wasn't running to prevent conflicts. By 3:15 p.m., the ripple effects became visible. Traffic backing up at 4 major intersections. Loading queues forming at warehouse entrances. Dispatch schedules showing everything green and on time, but ground reality telling a completely different story. I refreshed my email inbox. Nothing yet. They were probably still trying to figure out why the route management system wasn't responding to login attempts. At 3:22 p.m., the first confused email arrived. Subject line, quick question, data sync issue. Hi Marcus, Getting some weird delays on .Q updates. Can you take a look when you have a chance? Thanks, Kevin Walsh. Kevin was one of their operations supervisors. Good guy. Former military like me. He'd understand what was happening once he figured it out. But right now he was just seeing symptoms. I didn't respond. By 3:35 p.m., the emails were arriving every few minutes. Route data not updating. Signal timing problems at Northgate. Multiple trucks assigned to same bay. Still polite. Still assuming this was some kind of technical glitch that could be resolved with a quick phone call. At 3:41 p.m., my phone started ringing. Unknown Memphis number. I let it go to voicemail. Then another call from a different number. Then a third. The panic was beginning. I pulled up the system logs and watched connection requests hammering uselessly against the demo package. Amanda's team was trying to operate as live infrastructure. Hundreds of failed handshake attempts. Every request bouncing back empty because there was no actual system behind the interface. They were trying to drive a car using only a photograph of the dashboard. By 4 p.m., the situation had deteriorated significantly. Traffic gridlock at 6 major choke points. Loading dock conflicts at 11 different facilities. Delivery schedules falling behind by an average of 47 minutes across the network. And somewhere in a corporate office building, Amanda Pierce was probably staring at user interface screens that still showed everything functioning normally, wondering why reality didn't match her data. At 4:08 p.m., an email arrived with red priority flags. Subject line: urgent system failure critical. Multiple operational conflicts. No response from routing controls. Dock assignments completely out of sync. Need immediate support. This is affecting our compliance status. Please respond ASAP. Michelle Roberts. The corporate politeness was cracking. They were starting to understand that this wasn't a minor glitch. I closed the email without reading the rest and checked the financial impact calculator I'd built into my monitoring tools. Conservative estimate: $180,000 in daily losses from delayed deliveries, missed schedules, and compliance violations. Real number was probably higher once you factored in customer satisfaction and contractual penalties. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Emergency situation. Call immediately. I deleted the message. At 4:23 p.m., the phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed Apex Freight, Legal Department. I declined the call and watched it go to voicemail. Then another call from a block number. Declined. By 4:30 p.m., I had 47 missed calls and 23 unread voicemails. The Memphis freight corridor was experiencing what the military would call a cascading systems failure. Nothing was coordinating with anything else. Drivers were making navigation decisions based on stale data. Dispatchers were issuing conflicting instructions. Warehouse managers were trying to manually assign dock space while their computers insisted everything was running smoothly. I opened a new document on my laptop and started typing. Emergency System Restoration Proposal Terms. Payment due via wire transfer before reactivation. Rate 2.5x standard monthly fee for immediate restoration service. Duration 72-hour emergency window. Conditions: full acknowledgement of service terms and intellectual property ownership. I attached the document to an email address to Amanda Pierce, legal counsel and the operations director. Subject line: emergency restoration services available. Then I hit send and ordered another cup of coffee. The education phase was complete. Now came the negotiation. At 4:47 p.m., the calendar invite arrived. Emergency conference call 5 p.m. Central. Immediate response required. No polite language this time. No corporate pleasantries. Just panic in all caps. I joined the call at 4:58 p.m. Professional appearance, calm demeanor, sitting in my home office with my engineering certificates visible in the background. The screen filled with stressed executives in various stages of crisis management. Henry Coleman, some kind of VP, joined first. Tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, the look of a man who'd spent the last 2 hours in emergency meetings. Then came legal counsel. 2 attorneys, one taking rapid notes on a legal pad, the other reviewing documents on a second monitor. Kevin Walsh, the operations director, appeared next. I'd worked with Kevin during the original implementation. Former Navy logistics, understood systems thinking. He looked exhausted but unsurprised, like he'd been expecting this conversation for months. Amanda Pierce was already in the call when I connected, positioned in the bottom corner of the screen. Small window, muted microphone, body language that suggested she'd been excluded from leadership of her own crisis. Nobody said hello. Henry cleared his throat and dove straight into damage control mode. Marcus, appreciate you joining on short notice. We're dealing with what appears to be a significant system disruption. Our operations are effectively paralyzed and we need to understand our options for immediate restoration. I nodded once. Your system lease was terminated yesterday. If you want operational access restored, the terms are outlined in my emergency service proposal. The legal counsel leaned into her camera. Marcus, we've reviewed your proposal. Some of the financial terms seem elevated given the circumstances. Emergency response pricing, I replied. Standard practice when critical infrastructure fails during business hours. Kevin Walsh spoke up, his voice tight with fatigue. Marcus, we've got 23 warehouses completely offline. Traffic backing up across the entire corridor. Compliance violations accumulating by the hour. Our insurance carriers are already asking questions. He glanced off screen at something. 4 major customers have called threatening contract termination if we don't restore normal operations by tomorrow morning. Henry jumped back in. Look, we understand there may have been some communication issues during the transition process, but we need to focus on solutions. Can we discuss modification of the emergency terms? No. The single word hung in the air. No explanation, no negotiation, no corporate back and forth. Just a simple statement of fact. Amanda finally unmuted her microphone. This is unreasonable, Marcus. You're holding our entire operation hostage over a contract dispute. I looked directly into the camera. You terminated my services and demanded handover of infrastructure you never purchased. I provided exactly what your contract entitled you to receive. Nothing more, nothing less. She started to respond, but Henry cut her off with a sharp look. The legal counsel tried a different approach. Would you consider a modified payment structure? Perhaps installments over wire transfer, only full payment before reactivation. Kevin Walsh leaned forward. Marcus, what's the timeline for restoration once payment clears? 20 minutes, I said. System comes back online immediately after I confirm funds transfer. Henry looked at his legal team, then back at the camera. We need 5 minutes to discuss internally. Can you hold? I nodded. I'll be here. They clicked into a breakout room, leaving me alone on the call with Amanda's muted video square. She stared at the camera like she wanted to say something. Didn't. I took a sip of coffee and checked my email. The emergency proposal had been forwarded to at least 8 different people in their organization. Finance department, legal department, operations, even their insurance carrier. Everyone trying to understand how a simple vendor termination had turned into a company-threatening crisis. 6 minutes later, they returned to the main call. Henry's expression had shifted from desperation to resignation. Legal is initiating the wire transfer now. Should complete within 30 minutes. Let me know when it hits my account, I said. 22 minutes later, my banking app chimed with an incoming transfer notification. Payment confirmed, amount correct, no complications. I walked out to my workshop, sat down at the control panel, and flipped the master relay switch back to active. Every screen in my house lit up with green indicators. Traffic nodes reconnecting in sequence, route calculations resuming, dock assignments updating in real time, GPS tracking coming back online. The Memphis freight corridor came back to life like someone had just restarted the circulatory system of a major metropolitan area. I returned to the video call where everyone was still waiting. System is operational, I announced. All services restored. Henry nodded. We appreciate the rapid response, I said evenly. I didn't do this rapidly. I did this according to the terms you agreed to. Nobody responded. Amanda's camera was still on, but she hadn't said a word since her hostage comment. I left the call without ceremony. For the next 48 hours, I monitored system performance from my kitchen table. Everything ran flawlessly. Traffic synchronized perfectly. No dock conflicts, no compliance issues, no missed delivery windows, and no communication from Apex Freight Solutions. No emails, no phone calls, no requests for system modifications. They'd learned to stay quiet. On Friday morning, a new email arrived from a different sender. Strategic partnership discussion. New terms proposal. From someone named Patricia Wells, VP of Corporate Strategy. Someone brought in specifically to handle the aftermath without mentioning Amanda Pierce's name anywhere in the correspondence. The offer was substantial. 3-year exclusive contract, enhanced compensation, priority consideration for future expansion projects, professional language, respectful tone, acknowledgement of intellectual property ownership. I read through it twice, then opened a blank document, and began drafting my response. New terms, stricter protections, ironclad ownership clauses, no room for future misunderstandings about who controlled what. 2 weeks later, the signed contract arrived in my inbox. Every clause exactly as I'd written it. No modifications, no negotiations, no corporate wordsmithing. Amanda Pierce's name was nowhere on the signature page. I closed my laptop and walked out to my workshop. The control panel was humming quietly, all indicators green. The Memphis freight network flowing smoothly under my direction. Word travels fast in logistics circles. By the end of the month, I'd received inquiry emails from companies in Nashville, Atlanta, and Birmingham, all asking variations of the same question. Are you available for system development projects? I wasn't naive. They'd heard about Memphis. They knew what happened when someone tried to steal custom infrastructure from an Army logistics veteran who understood the difference between using something and owning it. That reputation was worth more than any marketing campaign I could have purchased. I opened my laptop and started typing a new document. 2025 Standard Service Agreement Marcus Thompson Transportation Systems. The foundation was solid.